Well, hello and welcome back to Michelle Howe and Kathleen Elle, live on just what it's like to be in the spiritual community and how you can go deeper. Welcome, Michelle, for joining me, or actually coming up with this idea. It's me joining you, really.
We're joined together. How about that?
Sounds great. That sounds good. Just want to remind everybody that if you're watching live, please go ahead and let StreamYard know that they can use your name. So you just have to click on the button saying, please use my name. So we know who's commenting on the bottom. So be sure to just say hello and post your name. And if you have a question and you haven't given StreamYard your name, just type in question from your name and then go ahead and say what your question is. I should just jump back. Michelle and I did a live a couple of weeks ago, and we did a live on what it's like to be an empath and what an empath means. And this live is about embodying your masculine and feminine. And so, Michelle, if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead and talk to our group and let them know, whoever's listening, let them know what you feel is embodying your masculine and feminine and how that connects to you.
So I was just sharing, just so you know, I wasn't distracted here. I'm like, oh, I need to share. Embodying the masculine and the feminine. I'd like to step a little bit back and kind of look at what does masculine and feminine really mean for people. How do they relate to that? Some of us might look at it, well, the men are this way and the women are this way. And what exactly does that mean for us? So the way I look at feminine energy is very receptive, intuitive, loving. It's not a matter of male versus female. It's a matter of how does it show up as? It's nurturing, it's receptive, it's listening. That's what that is for me. And then there is the male side, which is action oriented, logical. Let's move forward. These are all like the positive male energies and the positive female energies. And of course we all want the positive side of what life brings our way, right? We want to show that. We want to embody that. The truth of the matter is we embody a whole range, so it's consciously being aware of what energies you want to embody and knowing that we really have a male side and a female side. Whether it's positive or negative in proportion to one another is another story. But we each have a certain tendency to be a certain way where our comfort zone is. And a lot of it is what we've seen and what comes natural to us. So we put this together. And I think this is such a great topic because if we have that awareness, balance means we're going to run into things that are going to require both the male and the female side of us to come forward. And if we're not comfortable being on the female end of receptivity, listening, processing, staying neutral and receptive to life, flowing with it, we can poo-poo one side or poo-poo the other side. I don't like that side of me. I don't like, so when we look in an environment, people are all embodying a certain amount of male and female, positive and negative within each one. So balance to me comes into play when we really fine tune and receive and show up as both.
Right. Yeah. So that you bring up a really good point. I think that just to clarify again, Michelle mentioned it earlier, but to clarify it again, we all embody feminine and masculine energies. And so it doesn't matter if you're identify as a female or a male or a transgender or whatever you identify yourself with in a human body. The fact is we have feminine and masculine energies. And how you can identify which energy you're dominating with. It could be just how you approach things in life. So before I got into the healing world, and before Logan died, or Logan's physical body died, and he transitioned into his energy world, my son Logan, I really dominated on a masculine side. And so, and it kind of goes back to what we're taught and how we stay safe and how we protect ourselves. And, as I've mentioned in other videos, is like from 0 to 8 years old, is how we are programmed to react or respond to the rest of the world, how we react or respond in our life. And, as a early child or a young child, I had some, let's just say, challenging times as a child. So my reaction, or my way that I showed up in life, was on an aggressive masculine side. So I was more on the, I'll show you, I'll get this done. Do not cross me, because I will cut your knees off. I will cut your legs off at your knees, and I will just plow over you. Because if I had something in my mind that I knew that I wanted to accomplish, then I was like, I'm going for it. Good morning, Catherine. It's so good to have you here. Catherine says, this is so interesting to me, especially as a businesswoman, both energies being used. Yes, exactly. So just to get back to, as a legislator and as a government official, or, a business owner, I really brought out the masculine energies within me. And that was because I wanted to achieve, I wanted to prove, I wanted to be seen as the love that I had inside. But what was really happening is I was protecting the feminine energies of being vulnerable and maybe not seen as strong if I were to have tears, or if I were to show my emotions, or if I were to really be truthful and honest. So I use certain things like manipulation and aggression and in your face, kind of like, like you're not going to dominate me. And that really caused dominating kind of characteristics in my life. So I'm wondering how you've used, Michelle, some of your more of the masculine traits, and not in such a good way. Not in a good. It's just like you become more aware of like the masculine traits that could be a little more on the aggressive side, and there's healing that's there to be done underneath. So I'm curious about it for you, like how you've used some of your masculine, and then we'll get into the feminine. But I think that the masculine is more dominant in women.
Well, let's be clear. We live in more of a masculine dominated logical society. When you hear things like, hey, feelings don't matter, feelings aren't facts, like it's almost looked at, and even like sensitivity is looked at something lesser than by a lot of people. A lot of people don't show emotions, don't really reveal that, or they don't even want to see it within themselves. They will bury it as far as they can. And they're more comfortable with, I'm going to, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And here we are. And very matter of fact, so my history with masculine energy is very interesting. I've always had more male that I showed the world, because I could tell that if I really showed, like, I was going to get more respect if there was more male. If I cried, that wasn't going to be good. If I said anything that was a little bit more sensitive, I could get teased. I could get, so I learned very quickly what to keep to myself, right? And what to share. Were there negative parts of this? I don't know that I ever realized there was a negative side to my masculine, because it was actually very empowering to me to be that organized, to be that strong in certain areas of my life. And then, of course, not all areas could I be that male energy, dating and whatnot. The female came out. So I didn't go as far as you. It wasn't my outside most people saw me pretty sensitive, I would say. The masculine side is a side of me I actually try to keep to myself because I don't want people to see just how strong I can be.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I would take it as they might not like me as much. They might judge me. They might see, because I always looked at the male energy negatively. I never appreciated anybody being that outspoken. I always knew there was pain behind the outer facade of someone who had to act, especially if it was a woman, who had to act that manly, like stay back, don't talk to me, it's a wall, basically.
And there's such a broad range, right, of acting out in our more masculine or more feminine way. There's a huge range. So to clump it all into one in just the short time that we have, it wouldn't be fair. So I'd love to hear from the audience. Just post in the audience in the comments, like how you feel you've used some of your male, or we'd love to hear that, how you've used some of your male energies to benefit you, to go further along in whatever you experience, And so I'm just going to shift as we do that, but shift over into the feminine energies, like how have you used your feminine energies to benefit you, to get what you want, While we talk about crying not necessarily being how you could get ahead in the workplace, it certainly can work in your personal lives. Like you could definitely use your feminine energy to your advantage in your relationships. So where you could start crying and feel heard and just, you can use that to your advantage as well. So I'm curious, Michelle, like how do you handle your feminine energies and how have you used your feminine to your advantage?
There's how we see ourselves, how I handle myself. Then there's what other people see, what they think of how I'm behaving towards them. I am more comfortable in the male energy. I am definitely. The female energy, I can work with it for a certain period of time and I can be in it, but then it's like, nope, we're done. We're done going down that road. So there's a certain comfort level. And as I've progressed down this whole spiritual journey, I have embraced more of the female because she is that voice inside. There was a battle at one point, and there still can be at times. We're going to do this. I don't want to do that. I'm like, no, I'm going to force you to do this because the male energy wants to push and go and do, right? And my female was like, no, I don't want to do that. So it's coming to terms with both sides of me. And the female, I'm listening to her more because what would happen is she would sabotage everything. I'm like, you think you're steamrolling down this road without me, and that's not happening. So that was something I had to come to terms with. And I still do at times. I have to kind of stop and listen and see what actually feels more empowering for all of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been talking about some of the more aggressive sides of the feminine and the masculine and how we can use those energies to get what we want. But let's shift into the space of how we can blend our feminine when we know how we respond in the world, whether it's through our feminine energies or through our masculine energies, whichever one's dominant. We can take a look at how those energies are showing up. Are they more aggressive, or are they just like, for me, I think when we're strong and we're not strong, when we're sitting comfortably and blending the masculine and feminine energies that we hold, we as women can show up as strong and vulnerable and authentic. And yet, so as an example here for me, the way I see Michelle and I on my screen, and I'm not sure if that shows up the same way for your screen, but Michelle is in the front. Michelle is up front and she's very present. I'm a little bit back behind. There's more space between, like my face and the camera. And in the past, my masculine energies would have been, hold it, I need to be right up front, just like her. Like there needs to be equal play here. There's got to be whatever. But the more healed energies within me is like, we're perfect just the way we are. I don't need to compete, because sometimes the unhealed part of us, of the masculine and feminine, is about competition and about control and about dominating, because it's about safety and about worthiness and about lovableness. And so for me, it just happened to be that our cameras are set up the way they are, and there was no need to adjust, right? Like there was no need to adjust those cameras. It just is, and that we're on equal footing. We're just set up differently. And so that's a good example of being in a healthier place within your feminine and masculine energies, and to be aware of how you're triggered by how someone else behaves with their masculine energies, with their feminine energies. So
I know how to do that. It's actually anybody can do it. If you want to do it, it's there to be done. You study it. You study people, you do it. So you make a choice. You make a conscious choice. I had a thought in my head about this. And some of the stuff that we behave, and it's not always conscious to us. That's why we have these relationships, to show us a mirror of how we're behaving, or how we interact, or who are we choosing to be in any given moment in time. I know that growing up, I had a certain perspective of women. Now, mind you, I am a woman. I had a certain perspective of them, and I could pinpoint the things about them that I didn't quite like. And a lot of them were actually mirrors of things I didn't like about myself. How dare they bring that to the table? I know exactly what that is, but I know that so well because it's in me too. So it's knowing that we are all individuals, but we're also connected. We all can use any and all of those things. So when we start, really stepping forward and being more embodied and more aware of the journey, we stop judging them, which means we stop judging ourselves, because we understand why that's happening out there. And that's where they're at.
Yeah.
What it is.
I'm glad that you brought up that we don't always know, because I really did not. I mean, had I known that I was acting aggressive and protective and like putting the boundaries around me of like, and, I did know that I was pretty driven very early on. Like I knew I was really driven, but I didn't know what was driving that. And what was driving that was fear, was unlovableness, was unworthiness. And our responses or reactions to other people are usually unconscious. And it is the program that's stuck in us that we get to work through, So as we become more and more aware, as we become more and more curious about how we respond to others, or how our stomach may react to someone else's comments or behaviors, we become curious about that. Like, what about that triggers me? What about that do I not like? What about that? And where did I feel that the first time? When did I feel that energy, not the dislike, but the energy in our body? So it's really about working through our limiting beliefs in our head, our blocks in our body, the trauma that we have in our soul. And I just would love to read a couple of the comments, and maybe you could respond to them as well. One of the comments from Lauren is, this is very interesting. I have to say I'm probably more feminine energy, but will use the masculine when I need to. And I think that's the case for a lot of us. For me, it was masculine, but that's the case for a lot of us. Catherine's like, my masculine has served me in business and when I've needed protection. but it's been damaging in relationships. Right. Really good point, Catherine.
Yeah.
You know, when women show up with a masculine energy in relationships, that kind of turns off men. You know, like men want to, they've been programmed to be caregivers, to be providers. And so when women show up and say, no, 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 I don't need that. No, 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 I don't need that. I'm all good. I can take care of myself. It kind of like creates that conflict of like, hold it. Where's my role? And how do I do this? And it doesn't mean that they have to be the financial provider. It doesn't mean, you know, it's just what they've been programmed with as well. So it's about awareness. And I think that's what the discussion is, right? You know, like,
yeah. I would say that the whole relationships, if you have too much male energy and you have two people come together, like you can technically offset one another and mitigate a situation. But a husband or a spouse, whatever, a partner may embody so much of the same as you that you go head to head. If it's more like, if you're more male focused, competitive, I've got this, I don't need anybody type of thing. And it goes to an extreme. And then you've got the female. I mean, then you've got the male energy looking at that saying the same thing. Now there's two competitive forces together. So what makes two people suitable for one another? It's like you have to kind of swim and see how you can fit in and validate the other person without squashing the other person's who they are. Not all males are all male focused energy.
Exactly.
They're not. And it's funny because when I was dating, the biggest no-no was the moment you tell me what to do, you're done. You know, that was like a deal breaker. So,
by the way, that is masculine energy.
Oh, big time. And so it was very hard for me to find a spouse that was going to be okay with a wife that was that strong, right? So then I met my husband, and immediately I softened. That male didn't come out ready to punch and tell you what not to tell me, because my husband embodies actually more of the feminine side. And he doesn't trigger me in the least. So there's, you know, a soulmate relationship where he certainly gets to make decisions. I don't step into that male that strongly because I don't need to defend myself.
I was going to say, you don't have to protect yourself.
No.
Like, yeah, that's interesting. Sally Ann, this is a great example, a huge example of how females sometimes show up because they want to hide a little. Their female energy is about protection again, to hide a little, not, you know, to step back. There was a point when I realized that my speech was overly feminine, my pronunciation. So I adjusted it. That's awesome. So again, it goes back to the awareness of where we are and what we're doing. And so thank you for the comment, Sally. I want to read Catherine's. I got to put my glasses on though, so because it's a big one, and I tried to put it on the screen, but it covered our faces. So prior to learning about the different energies, I wanted things black and white, was so uncomfortable in the gray. Now I'm more comfortable in the gray. I wonder if the feminine is about being in the gray, sort of the flowing through it. Doesn't have to be so defined about everything. Well, is it the feminine, or is it this, just a question, just engaging? Like, is it the feminine being in the gray, or is it really embracing both the feminine and masculine, and being comfortable in the gray, whether it's feminine or masculine? And really, the healthy feminine and masculine energies is about clear communication, about open communication, holding space with compassion. Now, we can, as women, can be strong in our beliefs, we can be strong in our thoughts, and we can be just amazing business women and still feel feminine within. You know, I feel like I operate from my feminine energy most of the time now, because it's about truth and authenticity and being vulnerable. You know, lots of times I'll show up at times, not lots of times, there'll be times when I show up And on lives, we'll have tears strolling down my cheeks, like on Logan's birthday. Like I did a live in our private group, and it was just like, listen, today's a tough day. So being vulnerable and honest creates strength and presence and compassion. And those are the words that come up for me for a healthy feminine energy, and even a masculine energy for me. And I add my masculine and feminine healthy words. And so I'm going to ask you to do the same, Michelle. It's like healthy masculine words for me is strength, compassion, uh, um, um, articulate and engaging and inclusive. Still making decisions and moving forward with it, but being inclusive in that and that discussion, and having those truthful, vulnerable conversations without aggression and judgment. And still being honest and sharing your opinions.
So when there's that aggression that comes out, basically you're hitting someone's trigger points. There is pain behind that. That's why why do you put up a wall and you're, don't come in, don't say this. You don't know what to do with the emotions that bubble up inside of you, and it makes you feel very uncomfortable. So then they lash out. How dare you make me feel that way? What did you just, so it's not about, comes out, it's not about me, it's about you. What did you just say? It's like this crazy game you're playing back and forth, not realizing that there's layers of information within that exchange that you have to look at. So, when you're talking about a couple or a relationship or whatnot, you should be able to have a conversation that's not competitive with me being right and you being wrong. Mm-hmm. That conversation needs to happen, because the moment one person starts, I'm winning and you're losing, I'm winning and you're losing, I'm always the victor, and here it goes again. It's not, you're not truly engaging on par with another person. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you're being too strong or you're being too quote unquote weak. You're letting someone do whatever they want to do, or you're not. So that's like the relationship part. That's where we learn about this whole male and female energy, is how we show up in relationships with other people. So.
Yeah. And the showing up is about really reflection within versus outwardly, like we mentioned earlier, is, if someone's triggering you, or if you're feeling like you need to be aggressive, then it's really worth, I invite you to step back and say, what about what's happening right now is triggering a past experience for me where I didn't feel safe, I didn't feel worthy, I felt unlovable, I felt threatened, like some of the things that really create negative patterns in our life. What about that? And so it's worth just really stepping back and see, it's interesting. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I want to get to Shelley's comment because I just love it. But a conversation with someone the other day about how my protection of my heart created a lot of the dysfunction in my marriages, my relationships. Like I would choose people who wanted to be the rescuers, who wanted to be that needed the rescuing platform as their insecurity cover or mask, they became a rescuer because that's what gave them their self-worth, And then for me, I wanted the rescuer because I felt loved and I could show them that, that I was there and I loved them. And yet the second that there was any threat in there at all, I was like, you're not telling me what to do, I'll show you, it's just really great to be able to reflect back to say, what was my part in that? So it's really no more finger pointing to anyone else other than reflection on our own behaviors and how we can shift that So how we can shift that so we can show up differently in new relationships or in the relationships that we still have. Sheila, always in loving transformational energy, connecting to balance and balance. I love that. So true. We have all kinds of comments, Michelle. Healthy masculine energy word for me is assertive. That's healthy. Interesting. Yeah. Assertive.
I don't know that I love the word assertive because it acts, it's almost like I'm going to assert myself to you right now, as opposed to I'm going to communicate. I'm going to communicate to you where I stand. Sometimes I think assertive, when you feel like you've been taken advantage of, back off. Like, back off. I'm going to be assertive here. And you can put it at any level of assertiveness. I have learned from coming from more of a male stance, I have to actually consciously be careful. I'm so direct. I can be direct. How do I say this in a way that doesn't hurt another person? Because being an empath, I can feel them very well. And that's good and bad, right? So it could stop me from speaking my truth if I can feel them go, and I can tell what's going to trigger them immediately. So I'm like, oh, shoot, how do I say this? Almost like there should have been some sensitivity training in how to speak your truth in a loving way to another person without letting them run the show. You know what I mean? Run the show. How do you speak it in that way that you stand your ground lovingly, right?
Yeah.
Lovingly.
I love this conversation. So I love these conversations with different people because there's different approaches and different meanings. And so, Sheila, I'd love to hear from you what assertiveness means for you, because how I approach it is a little differently than how Michelle approaches it. So now you get to have two different examples on how you would approach your conversation. For me, I would speak my truth in the best way possible. And then I'd say, for me, what I usually say, if I see the trigger or if I feel, because both of us are empaths and I get what you're saying, if I feel I can feel instantly the shift in their energy if I've triggered them. So what I usually say after that is like, so I can sense that might have triggered you a little differently. So please just share with me what you heard, what you think you heard. Please share with me what you heard me say. So where I can clarify what I really meant to say in the way that they could understand it. So that's how I do it now versus trying to, for me, I don't try to censor what I say anymore. If it's coming from my heart, it's truly coming from my heart. And if it affects someone in a way that it's not meant to, then I can see that and say, okay, so please share with me what you heard. So we're on the same page. I do that in emails too, by the way. Lauren, wow, this really has me thinking, because I am a strong-willed girl. I will hold my ground, but sensitive to others, compassionate. I will always tend to put others first. Oh, really good awareness, Lauren. I love it. Sally Ann, when I'm dealing with cheating in business, I get real aggressive. Yeah. Good morning, Michelle. Someone says, Michelle Way says, good morning. Good morning. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think I think there's such an art to being able to communicate and speak your truth. And even if it's a little bit more aggressive, like if it's very aggressive, there are places where that aggression is an asset and you need to be that aggressive. But in regular friendships and at home, the aggression isn't necessary. It shouldn't be necessary. How do you live with aggression every day, right? So Sally says, I guess the outrage can go back to when my mom was struggling to care for me. Dad got a new wife and she took our house, and Dad didn't pay child support. He kind of tipped her into insanity. So there's anger behind that, and injustice, and how can this happen? And it can paint the way we look at other people, the way we interpret immediately and unconsciously and so quickly what could happen, what what the intentions were and how bad things are. And I know things are not perfect with many, many, many people and their dynamics and their decisions. But at the end of the day, when we feel anger, we own the anger, we wear the anger. It stays in us. So it's to our advantage to go in there and clear that out. So you soften so that who you show up as and what you show up as is just, I don't know, to me, it's like a softer, beautiful version of you versus somebody that's holding on to something.
Yeah.
That's got some prejudice in some way or some negativity that you see, because I don't know, it comes back into how we overall function. So,
Sally Ann, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that here with us. I really appreciate, we both appreciate you being willing to be that vulnerable on social media. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what you're feeling underneath. I'm not, I certainly can't speak to that, but what I can say is that for me, what bubbled up inside of me is the fear of abandonment. I think you were the one that mentioned earlier, Sally, about really speaking softer, or because you didn't want to really be spoken, seen necessarily, or the fear of, it feels like there was a fear of abandonment, even when you were speaking, like you were so soft that you didn't want to be abandoned in a way. So, I don't know what it is, but I truly appreciate your willingness. We both do appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable here in social media. And I'm so glad that you're aware of it. Like you being aware of this gives you an opportunity, if you haven't already, to start working with people like Michelle or myself or others that can help you work through some of that. So where you can shift the patterns if there are patterns for you.
It's only really relative if it's getting in our way. There's a point in time where all of us are faced with, I call it, things that need to be gone, things that need to be resolved, released. And there's a tipping point where, you know what, I'm going to look at this now. It's time.
Yeah.
So
you want to go ahead and read this?
Michelle says, for me, the masculine is giving and taking action, and feminine is receiving and allowing everything to unfold naturally. I think that's beautifully said. The key is to know the difference, to be able to walk every day, the balance and harmony.
Yeah. Oh, well said. I think that's very well said. That was both Michelle way. That's why I quickly went to the next one.
Sure. What's Sheila say? Asserting myself is a calm, steady way. It is different, more firm, because as a woman, I've found that most men do not hear me unless I bring forth their energy, assertive energy.
Oh, interesting. I love it. Thank you so much for clarifying. That's really helpful.
And the thing here is too, when you use words, they mean different things to different, they have a definition they have a definition, but then how we embody assertive is going to different. How I do assertive versus how you do assertive versus how Sheila does assertive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, even when you speak to that, you're going to how you're perceiving it based on your experience of that word, your definition. Sheila, beautiful perspectives here. Thank you, Sheila.
So she said before that, it's a fairly long one. It is a skill I've had to learn in my information technology world. I also had to push some forward assertive energy last year while working with a high ticket business coach, which, believe me, I thought that was funny and had not expected to have to do that. Mind you, I am typically a soft energy. Oh, I love it. I love awarenesses, ladies. I love it. Sally, I'll think about how I could do that. My dad actually said this will be my issue. Interesting. There's a Facebook user that we can't see. I'm an empath, but have lots of masculine energy. I am strong-willed and do not like someone telling me what to do. Amen, sister. I do feel, though, that I am not either give a chance. I am not either give a chance or I, interesting. I do feel, though, that I am not either give a chance or I do not take the chance to feel my feminine energy and allow others to care and nurture me. I
Mm.
then become resentful. I need to work on that balance. I am loving this whole conversation. Thank you, whomever said that. Go ahead, Michelle, if
It's
you have.
about what came to me was, if you can come to terms with what your needs are from a feminine perspective, and then not put it in the corner, put it in the closet. This is what I would like. And you ask for that, and the universe will give you what you're asking for. They'll bring the people in. It's like an attraction. It'll attract right into you as long as you can admit what it is you're looking for and how you can be more vulnerable with that. It is harder to be, vulnerable, to actually, your heart needs a certain warm place within it, and it should mainly come from you. But being surrounded by other people that you can be safe in that space with them. So you embodying it is where it starts, and then from there you will attract more of it around you. But if somebody sees you or me as gruff in some way, if we're closing down the feminine and we're all about business and all about logic and all about, then the entryway makes it a little hard for other people to come in who are a little bit more touchy-feely, loving, giving. There's no room for that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
I'd be remiss to not say that for those who are going through sudden loss right now in any way, shape, or form, or have been through sudden loss recently, your triggers, your masculine or feminine triggers, will show up much more apparently in your life, because as you move through your grief or you've been triggered, it brings up unresolved issues in your life. And so for my life, when Logan took his life, that shattered all kinds of walls open for me from unresolved issues from my childhood. And what came out for me was real anger and aggression, and I snapped at anybody in anything, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know where the anger was coming from. I was getting help, but the long story short is that when you're going through something that has affected you in what a lot of us call a negative way, it's a sudden shock to your system, then that's going to bring up unresolved issues. And so really my encouragement to you, or I invite you to seek some people out to work with you. I do one-on-one coaching, intuitive coaching. I bring in my healing modalities into that. Michelle does coaching, and both of us have sacred healing circles. And so look at both of our websites. This is not a selling platform, and yet we also want to offer you the resources that we have to offer you. And it's like, go to our website. Mine's KathleenElle.com. What's yours, Michelle?
EmpathEvolution.com.
Yeah, there you go. So both of us are willing to work with you and really would love to help you embody both your feminine and masculine. And so I just wanted to add that as we were talking about all of these comments. There's Lauren. It's a long one here, but go ahead, Michelle, if you'd like.
Sure. Our experiences really impact that energy. For example, the masculine energy in me said a long time ago, I will not be a victim of the circumstances of my childhood. And the feminine energy said, let it go. You can't change it. Don't let it steal anything of your peace. So at that point in time, like all of us, we have to make a choice where we want to be, how we want to feel. And, sometimes it's an overwhelming, big, sudden experience that you don't even know where things are coming from, but you're trying your best to swim through something. And other times I've seen where things went wrong. That's not going to be my life going forward. because I know who and what I want ahead of me. And that vibration, those stories, those happenings don't define me going forward. So it kudos to you, Lauren, for truly making your decision clear, seeing, the handwriting on the wall, the storyline, and what you don't want in your life, period, without any anger, you were able to, in some way, transmute that experience and look beyond it and create your future. Right. Yeah. So that is a blessing.
Lauren, I love your comment because, I can resonate completely with what you're saying. It's all about the avoidance of repeating your past, specifically if you've had a challenging childhood, which, let's just face it, most of us have. And all of us, every single person on this earth, will have an event in our life that will be traumatic. Every single one of us, I don't care who we are. Some of us have more than others. Some of us have our share. Some of us have lived a lot of it. And others have just one or two, but all of us will go through something that will trigger us, that will help us. We can choose. We can choose to bury it, avoid it, mask it, pretend it doesn't exist, or we can choose to step into it so you can heal that unresolved challenge, that unresolved issue that we have in our life, so we can truly live a love-centered, connected, spiritually connected, energetic, peaceful, joyful life on the most part. So
it's when you see search situations repeat and repeat. It's when you get the visions and the emotions of the past over and over and over again, or you move all those experiences from the past into coloring your future in not the best, highest possible way for yourself. When things feel stifling, when you're dealing with anxiety or depression, that is all actually a call to awaken, because you have got to look at what that is in order to clear it. There's no way around it. And sometimes, people just want to, like anything else, we don't want to go into anything that's uncomfortable. We just want to keep plowing forward, right? Well, you can't plow very far if you're not feeling good. So
just in closing remarks, for me, for the way that I avoided all of that, turmoil and mess as my child. And we have time for one more question if someone has a question. And for me, I avoided it by doing, by working, by achieving, by continuing to go higher and higher. And every time I went one step higher, it still wasn't enough. I had to prove more and do more. And so we all have different coping mechanisms. Some of the coping mechanisms is alcohol and drugs. Some of the coping mechanisms are to be an excessive exerciser. Some of it is bulimic and anorexic. Some of it is overeating, or whatever it may be.
Overachieving. It's the I'm not enough syndrome. Let me do the, so I'm going to receive all this outward satisfaction, recognition, it's the outward manifestation of me. Let everyone see this, as opposed to the inner manifestation in the inner life that you have. That, there's plenty of people that don't have to, beat any sort of drum to make themselves feel valid or feel acknowledged or feel valuable. And then there is a whole heck of a lot of us that do. You know what I mean? So you live through that.
Yeah, and to just go on a little further with all that I stated earlier, is that in every single thing that I have done in my past has provided a resource or a tool for who I am today. So I don't regret a thing that I have experienced in my life. I am grateful because it has given me many teachings, many opportunities to move through the healing that I have and to be able to live in the peaceful world that I do today. And I get to use the skills and the tools that I learned by being that doer and overachiever, to form the business that I'm doing right now, to be able to use all of those skills in actually having a successful business. So, and to be able to be of service to you here. And so thank you for joining us. Michelle and I will do these periodically, and just keep a lookout for us. And Michelle, you want to have any closing remarks?
If there's anything specific that this audience, whether it's Kathleen's or mine, or you're new to either of us, that you'd like to explore a little bit more, we're both spiritual teachers. We're both healers. We both are empaths. We're introspective. The goal is to empower people on a journey, really, to who they are and create that space for themselves. Regardless of what's around you, what's happening is fine. It's happening, right? You are the one that matters here, period.
So thank you all. You can reach us at Michelle?
Empathevolution.com.
And KathleenElle.com. So we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Catherine, for your love. And thank you all for your vulnerability. And we will see you again soon. Take care.
Yes.